Hello, my name is Horama, and today I have found 6 dangerous encounters people have experienced with a creature known as the Dogman, and will be narrating them. But before we begin, I wanted to ask that if you end up enjoying my narrations, then please do consider liking and subscribing, as that really does help the channel a lot. But without any further ado, let's get into the narrations. The first encounter takes place in North Carolina, Robeson County. July 1990. I was around 9 years old or so, and was at my mom's friend's house, because they were having a little get-together. My mom's best friend at the time decided to go get something, which was at the house nearby, down a dirt road in the woods. My mom's friend decided to take my friend and me with her. I wish I had never gone with her. We rode with her over there, and when she got out, my friend and I decided to stay in her car and wait for her to come back. After sitting in her car for about 10 minutes, I'd say, we decided to get out to see what was taking her so long. When we did that, she told us to get back into the car, so we did as told. As it turned out, she was buying weed, so we weren't welcome in the house. So my buddy and I got back in her car and waited for her to come out. They had a lot of bulldogs at that property. The dogs had all been barking like crazy, and then suddenly just stopped all at once and went into their dog houses. That's when my friend and I saw this thing that looked like some kind of werewolf coming from behind the car. We froze and just stared at it as it walked by. This thing looked so demonic. When we saw it, we ducked down and laid on the floor of the car. We laid there for what seemed like ages, until we heard my mom's friend hitting on the driver's window, trying to get us to let her in. I guess it left when it heard her come out of the house or something, but nonetheless, it was a terrifying experience. The second encounter takes place in Virginia, Camden County. My stepdad lived in Virginia when he was about the age of 8, right on the edge of the Great Dismal Swamp. According to him, he was in bed one night when the sky was cloudless or just very bright. He never thought until recently whether the moon was shining or not. And on that night, he saw a beast looking right through his window, straight at him. He said that he could see spit running down its face, and its eyes were looking right at his eyes. It was supposedly standing up on its hind legs, and had cream red and brown colored matted fur, and a face almost like a wolf, other than its snout. Its facial features were very human. Its jawbones were high, the structure around its eyes, and its eyes themselves were humanesque. The coloring of its eyes, he believes, were yellow. The reason why I think this is interesting, and possibly valid, is because the Great Dismal Swamp covers a huge amount of territory and is hardly touched by humans. Only in recent years have people started to study its inhabitants. The grounds are wet, mossy, and absorb sound, and people have been known to wander into it and never return. Who knows what could be lurking in the unknown? It really chills my bones. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that when he crawled out of his bed and went straight to his mother's room, in the morning, when they looked around the house, all the windows had ground that was stirred up under them and grass that was yanked out. There were actual scratches in the wood under his window, and the paint was missing as well. However, as far as they could see, there were no discernible footprints. The third encounter takes place in Florida, Leon County. Okay, I'm sharing this story in hopes of someone else having another one, and I then will have this one out in the open. I was traveling on Highway 10 from the west coast to the south coast of Florida. I was with my 6 kids and pulling a trailer with all of my belongings and 3 dogs in it. I was in a big SUV, and it was around 2 a.m., I would say. The kids were all asleep, and my 13-year-old daughter was in the passenger seat to make sure I stayed awake. So, after traveling for about 3 days, I had decided, since we reached Florida, we would cut through the state to save some time. So, we got off Highway 10 on an off-road in hopes of getting gas and making up some time. It was around Route 27, Appalachian Coal National Forest. We came to the first little gas station. It was closed, and I was nervous because we desperately needed gas, so we continued on. I told my daughter to keep an eye out for deer crossing the 2-lane deserted highway, because hitting a deer could kill us all and turn us over due to the trailer we were pulling. We were traveling around 44 miles per hour. I remember this so clearly, like it was yesterday, but it was 3 years ago. We had our brights on because the road was dark and winding. A few houses were on that highway, but not too many. As we came around the corner, in the headlights, on the road, there was a lot of blood, fresh blood, and on the side of this road was this 6 to 7 foot tall creature. It was on its hind legs, hunched over a dead deer, eating it. It did not look up, not even when my headlights hit it. It was using its arms like a human eating the deer. It had a very muscular body, pointed ears, and a long muzzle. If you ever saw a werewolf, that was it. It had a skinnier lower body, but used its arms and hands just like a human. If this thing had looked up, I would have probably died on the spot. I looked over at my daughter. We were both seeing the same thing at the same time. Tears came to my eyes instantly, and at the same time, we both said, "Werewolf." I sped up because I was scared it would run and jump on the trailer and kill my dogs. As we got about a half-mile away, my heart was beating so hard. My daughter and I were so freaked out. It was a werewolf. I have never been a believer in the supernatural. I don't even watch any supernatural movies or have any reason to make this up. And as a matter of fact, until today, I have only told a handful of people about this. There is a werewolf in Florida. Not sure of the exact town or road, but I wish I did know, so I could find out if we were the only ones to have seen this thing. I will live my life wondering. It was between Alabama to Florida, along the Panhandle. I will never forget this night. The fourth encounter takes place in Florida, Lee County. I had my doubts of what it could have been, though at first glance I thought it was a bear, but the aggressive behaviors and the footprints told a different story. All of the evidence I've gathered points to the Dogman. So, the first night this all started was a few months ago. I was woken up one morning by something tapping on the window to my bedroom. It sounded like a fingernail on the glass. It was light tapping, but enough to wake me. I woke up, made some coffee, and grabbed a glass of water and went outside. I sat down and had a smoke, and then I heard some strange noises. Weird, like a clicking sort of sound. Not cicadas or grasshoppers. I'm used to those. Then, about 5 minutes later, I would say, a growling sound. Very deep, but short. This all happened around 3 a.m. My coffee was done about 20 minutes later, so I grabbed a cup and went back outside to my porch. I took my first sip, and I heard this blood-curdling scream about 150 feet behind my porch, maybe the next block over. I quickly finished my coffee, and as I'm walking inside, just as I open my glass sliding door, something hits my porch door and starts to beat the hell out of it for almost 5 minutes straight. This scared the hell out of me. I rushed inside, got another cup of coffee, and waited about 20 minutes looking out the kitchen window to see if anything was there. Being that my backyard was completely dark, I'm not sure what I expected, but I gave up waiting and went back outside. I sit down and I'm drinking my coffee, and I hear what sounds like my neighbor's new aluminum fence getting destroyed. I'm looking on my side, and nothing. My guess is it went to the other side of his property to beat the hell out of the panels. It stopped quickly, and that was that. No noise for the rest of the morning. Fast forward 2 months, Thanksgiving 2020. I'm awoken again at 3 a.m. Same tapping on the window event. My dogs haven't barked either, so I'm quite suspicious. I make my way outside, coffee ready, iPhone up in case there's something there, and nothing. I'm talking on the phone with my trucker buddies about what happened before Thanksgiving, and they don't have a clue either. Mind you, we all grew up in these woods, well before the internet was a thing, so we naturally played in the woods. About 2 hours goes by, and the sun is up enough that I can kind of make out the shape in the woods behind my house. It's about 5'5", I would say, and just standing in this position for a good 45 minutes. I managed to get a picture of it, but it's in horrible quality. The rest of the day and that night will live with me forever. Not even 2 hours later, I heard this tree branch snap off and something crash to the ground. Something heavy. No mistaking that sound for a tree falling over. Turns out, a tree on the edge of my neighbor's property, about 25 feet up, a large branch 5 inches in diameter, was just twisted off and snapped like a twig. It's still hanging there. It doesn't even touch the ground, but it's about 12 feet long. I did have to look in the woods for a bit to see if I could find anything. It's mostly one obvious human trail that is used often, and 2 to 3 small animal trails, and this really crappy makeshift trail with broken trees littering the outline and the sides of it. This trail is very run down, so there is quite a lot of stuff to climb over if you want to walk it. There's many logs piled on each other, and it's overgrown wherever you look. But after I'm finished exploring, I go back inside for a drink and go out to my garage where I can work on a few hobbies that I've been cultivating for a while. I recently moved to this house, so stuff isn't quite unpacked yet. And as I'm going through the boxes and stuff, I hear this loud ruckus coming from the small plot across the street from me. Something big is moving the bushes, and there was a large dead tree knocked down before, but something cracked it open and was eating the grubs inside. At least, that's what I assume was happening. The sound, however, quickly went away. I heard whatever it was run north towards the canal, which is very close, maybe 90 feet from my driveway. Fast forward a couple of hours, and I'm still in my garage, but the door is closed this time, and I accidentally banged on the garage door, and then I heard something bang back on the other side of it. Me thinking that it's just my kids, being the teenagers that they are, I bang again. But I heard this really loud growl. I instantly ran out of my garage and through the house to the outside part, and all of my trash cans are open and knocked over. My Thanksgiving turkey carcass, which was in a box, had been taken, but the rancid smell stayed. I followed the smell to my backyard and called a friend who's a very good hunter, and he tells me to stay calm and move slow. I turn off my porch light and I'm sitting out there smoking a cigarette when I hear the bushes on the corner of my house being moved loudly. I turn around and I heard something large trample the grass down to the side of my yard. The neighbor's dog is going crazy barking at it, so I'm not stupid enough to chase it into the street. So I stayed on my porch and waited, and suddenly this big 6-foot tall blackish thing runs from the other side of my house and to the behind of my neighbor's house. His security lights kicked on and it ducked behind their above ground pool. It crouched over and I was barely able to see it. This thing was easily twice the size of me, probably 400 to 500 pounds. The following day, I found a foot, or I guess a paw print, in an abandoned anthill in my yard that I had exterminated weeks prior. The morning dew ruined the footprint the next morning, but I do have a picture for size comparison. What makes me think that it's Dogman? Well, we have a marsh close by that's about 20 by 20 square miles in size, with no trails or roads in or out. There is a waterway within 100 feet of my house that is about 15 feet deep. I grow a lot of my own vegetables and fruits, and some have come up missing. As far as the woods behind my house go, there are several trails. Some are obviously human, as they are used frequently by neighbors. However, there are small animal trails, which are also obvious. And then there are the trails that don't make any sense. They zigzag through bramble vine areas. They are hard to navigate. The trees surrounding the trails are mostly broken off or leaning, something like a Bigfoot would do. I haven't found any structures yet, or any markers such as bones. I have, however, received a gift, a pile of leaves on my doorstep one morning. The leaves are from plants in my backyard and have no possible way of magically appearing there. The fifth encounter takes place in Georgia, Buck Shoals State Park. This will be a brief summary, because if I wrote most of the entire encounter here, well, way too long. On July 4th, 2016, just a few days ago now, two girlfriends and myself decided to raft down the Chattahoochee River and spend time at the diving rock and laugh at all the drunks enjoying their holiday. This is a North Georgia summer tradition going way back to the 60s. I am 47 now, but in my youth I did it quite a few times, and damn near killed myself doing a gainer off the diving rock when I landed on my belly, inhaled water somehow, and nearly drowned. I was fairly drunk, and don't remember exactly how I made it back to the surface, but my body was purple the next day, and my internal organs hurt for weeks. The river was way down that year, maybe 1988, so that made the big flat rock at least 25 feet off the river. Most people chickened out once they got up there. Anyhow, so this past Monday, after at least 28 years, we were back, but sober now, since I haven't drank alcohol in over 10 years. I had to answer the call of nature, so I had to walk very far back in the dense woods because of all the people. Having nothing but my bathing suit, I walked much further so I could try and find something akin to toilet tissue. Finally, after I reached a small clearing surrounded by old-growth pines, I began my business. As I am squatting in a very vulnerable position, out walks, in broad daylight, an enormous, canine-type creature. I spent 21 years in the army, all over the world, and 3 different theaters of war, and I have never even heard of this kind of creature before. In all 3 days since, I have barely slept at all, researching everything in a zombified state. I can still taste the fear in my throat and my own vomit. I am 6 foot tall and about 250 solid pounds, and this thing dwarfed me, at least 7'6" and maybe 350 to 400 pounds. As a former college and semi-pro football player and powerlifter, I know about big people and about strength and musculature, and this was no normal creature that evolved somehow in that environment. This is some kind of genetically mixed entity of man, wolf, and primate. My encounter with it lasted for minutes. It displayed very bizarre behavior and vocalized several times at me. It stunk so bad and horrified me so badly that I retched again and again. I was gone so long that the girls came looking for me, and seemingly they are the reason why this thing ran off. When they found me, I was trembling and couldn't speak. As a combat lifesaver in the army, I can tell you for certain that I was in shock from this. Every joint in my body and my ab muscles are still in pain after 3 days. So, I am more than willing to share everything with you in the hopes that I can relieve my anxiety somewhat by just expressing my trauma. Because I'm not sure what exactly I saw, but I can promise you that this is not something that anyone would want to encounter twice. I am not grateful, I don't feel privileged, and I will not chase after this thing with a camera. The sixth encounter takes place in Alabama, Walker County. In 1969, I was 9 years old and lived about half a mile down the road from an old church and cemetery. There were 2 other houses there that no one lived in. There were strange things happening quite often around where we lived back then. I remember quite vividly one of the strange things that happened. My dad worked evenings from 3 p.m. until 11 p.m., just 3 miles down the road from our house. My mom, sister, and I had just gone to bed when we started to hear a bumping sound on the back of the house. My sister and I ran from the bedroom we shared in the back of the house to the front of the house where Mom and Dad's bedroom was. My sister and I were so scared that my mom let us sleep with her until Dad came home at 11 that night. Their bedroom had 2 windows, side by side. On the front of the house, above the porch, you could see through the curtains at night due to the street light out front. We were lying there after not hearing any more noise, when all of a sudden we heard something out on the front porch. Mom saw it first and sat up in bed. That made my sister and I notice her staring out the window. When we turned our gaze from Mom to the window, we saw what looked like a very large dog on the front porch. It was walking to the front door, upright, on its back legs. When it reached the front door, it shook it violently. It was as tall as the damn door, and we could see it scratching at the screen with its front paws. It remained there for what seemed like 15 minutes, but it was probably only a minute or 2. My mom didn't say a word for the entire time. She just shushed us until it turned and walked about 10 feet to the steps on its back legs. Just before it reached the steps and went down them, it went down on all 4 legs. Mom told us to go back to sleep, and eventually we did. I don't remember her telling my dad, but I do remember this very clearly. It was 6 to 6.5 feet tall, while standing upright on its back legs. You could see all of its facial features, its ears, snout, and its head. Those features made it resemble a German Shepherd. We hadn't seen anything that looked or acted like that thing in the area before that night. A lot of strange things happened there. I can't say whether it was a Dogman or something else, but it did walk on its back legs for several feet. Another time, when I was young, my sister, who shared the back room with me at the time, was at our grandma's house, spending the night. I had gone to bed, but wasn't asleep yet. My mom had my bedroom window open so air could get in. It was hot that night. The back of our house was high off the ground. Consequently, the bottom of my bedroom window was 8 feet off the ground. I had been lying there on my back when I rolled over onto my stomach toward the window. My foot went off the bed on the window side and wound up only being a few inches from the window. All of a sudden, something touched my foot. I don't remember if it grabbed my foot or what, but the screen was ripped. The curtains fell, and I scrambled off the bed and out of my bedroom into the living room, where my mom was. She had heard a commotion and saw that I was frightened. She asked me what was wrong, so I told her what happened. She went into my bedroom and saw the hole in the screen and that the curtain was down. She also saw how it was hanging halfway out the window. She didn't know what to think, so she called Dad home from work. He came home to check it out and walked around the house before coming in. He said he hadn't seen anything. At first, he didn't believe Mom. It wasn't until he saw the curtain that was hanging out of the window that he believed her. He couldn't figure it out. We didn't have any problems with prowlers. At first, they thought I had stuck my foot through the screen. I don't think that's what happened, because I wasn't sleeping just yet. I just couldn't have done that. The strange creature known as the Dogman has been sighted for far too long to be considered a mere modern creepypasta. Tales of this being date back hundreds of years. Its existence recorded within the mythologies of various cultures. And although these cultures have had next to no interaction, they all seem to have created the exact same creature. Could this be a mere coincidence? Perhaps a large, man-like wolf is just such a simple monster that nearly all of humanity has thought of it at some point. Or perhaps the truth is more sinister. But either way, I do hope that you enjoy my narrations, and even if you didn't, I do want to wish you a good rest of your day.